Civilization, as the most advanced species in the galaxy had defined it, required three essential qualities: faster-than-light travel, sustainable energy systems, and the ability to tolerate 17-hour budget meetings without committing violence. The Galactic Council headquarters occupied a perfectly mediocre position in what real estate agents would describe as the administrative district with growth potential of the Milky Way. The vast crystalline structure housed representatives from over 3,000 sentient species, all of whom had mastered the art of looking busy when superior officers floated by and perfected the ability to blame clerical errors on cosmic radiation. Today, the council chambers vibrated with an unusual energy. The morning had begun like any other: complaints about parking spaces for personal spacecraft, debates over which system would host next year's interstellar cultural festival, and the usual bickering about the temperature settings that could never satisfy species from both methane ice planets and magma cores simultaneously. "Order, I will have order," bellowed High Chancellor Zixvan, their voice amplification systems causing several aquatic delegates to ripple uncomfortably in their hydro suits. "We have an urgent matter that requires immediate attention." The assembled delegates quieted. Urgent matters were rare in a galaxy where most communication took several standard cycles to reach its destination. Anything urgent typically involved supernovae, black hole anomalies, or someone trying to claim interstellar copyright on the concept of circular spacecraft designs. "Again, our observation networks have detected unusual activity in the Sol system," continued the High Chancellor, their 17 eye stalks swiveling in distress. "Specifically, the third planet's inhabitants have established a sustainable colony on their fourth planet." A confused murmur swept through the chamber. "Chancellor, perhaps I misheard," spoke Ambassador Quell of the Photosynthetic Confederation, unfurling his leaf-like appendages with a rustle that indicated polite skepticism. "You said humans. The bipedal mammals from Sol 3 who still power vehicles with prehistoric plant matter and believe rectangular screens are the pinnacle of entertainment have colonized Sol 4. "Mars," offered a junior aide helpfully. "Yes, Mars," repeated the Chancellor. "They're calling it New Pittsburgh for reasons our cultural analysts haven't yet deciphered." The chamber erupted in dismissive laughter. The Arcturan delegate nearly choked on her mineral supplement. "Impossible," declared Representative Hank, a gaseous entity who occupied a specially designed containment field. His molecules bounced around excitedly, creating a visual that approximated snorting derision. "Humans require their specific atmospheric cocktail. They practically die if the temperature shifts more than 30 degrees. They can't even handle mild radiation without their DNA unraveling like cheap protein strands." The Chancellor activated the central holographic display. "Nevertheless, our probes confirm a functioning human settlement on Mars. Population, 7,342. The chamber fell silent as images materialized. Dome structures spanning kilometers, excavated caverns, surface vehicles traversing rusty plains, and unmistakably human figures moving about in protective gear that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd once heard about spacesuits from their cousin's friend. Ambassador Krell seemed genuinely perplexed. "Mars has practically no atmosphere. The temperatures range from freezing to why would anyone go there? The radiation levels alone should make sustained habitation impossible for such fragile organisms." "That's what our scientific division believed as well," agreed the Chancellor. "However, the evidence suggests humans have adapted their environment rather than themselves." "How long has this colony existed?" asked the representative from the Silicon Consciousness, their voice emanating from a hovering metallic sphere. "Based on our observations," the Chancellor paused dramatically, "approximately 17 Earth years." A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. "And we're only finding out now?" demanded the Regalian ambassador, her bioluminescent patches flashing with indignation. The Chancellor's eye stalks drooped slightly in embarrassment. There was a clerical error. Sol system was classified as developing pre-FTL and scheduled for routine observation once every 50 Earth years. The last survey was conducted when humans were still celebrating the first tentative steps on their moon and arguing about whether digital watches were a neat idea. "This changes everything," muttered the Andromedan observer, who technically had no voting rights but was permitted to comment on matters of galactic security. "If humans can survive on Mars, What else might they be capable of? Let's not overreact, cautioned Representative Hank, his gaseous form condensing slightly in what passed for a calming gesture among his kind. They've simply built some pressurized bubbles on a slightly less hospitable rock than their native one. They haven't exactly mastered interstellar colonization. That's what we said about the Proxians, reminded an ancient delegate from the back of the chamber whose species had evolved when the galaxy was still forming. Now look at them, controlling 7 major trade routes and monopolizing the market for non-Euclidean vacation properties. The Chancellor activated a secondary display. Our latest intelligence also indicates humans are developing plans for what they call terraforming, essentially remaking the entire planet to suit their biological preferences. The audacity, exclaimed Ambassador Krell. To think you can simply change a planet, next they'll believe they can engineer stars. What's truly concerning, continued the Chancellor, ignoring the interruption, is the apparent ability of humans to thrive in what should be impossible conditions. According to our xenobiological models, they shouldn't have survived the journey to Mars, let alone established a functioning society. Perhaps we've underestimated them, suggested a crystalline entity who represented the hive networks of Betelgeuse. After all, this is the species that still can't agree on standardized electrical outlets on their own planet, yet somehow split the atom. A concerning pattern emerges, agreed the Andromedan observer. Humans consistently achieve outcomes that our predictive models deem improbable. They appear to operate on a principle our psychologists have tentatively labeled, hold my beverage and observe this. The Chancellor's assistant, a multi-limbed data analyst, scuttled forward with a tablet. After a brief consultation, the Chancellor addressed the Assembly again. We have further updates. It appears humans have not only survived on Mars, but have established what they call an economy. They're mining resources, manufacturing goods, and apparently brewing fermented beverages called Mars malts, which they claim have notes of rusty iron and existential achievement. They're making alcohol on Mars. The Regalian ambassador's bioluminescent patches flickered with what might have been envy. That's actually somewhat impressive. The question becomes, said the Chancellor, all 17 eye stalks now rigid with concern, what does this development mean for the galactic community? Humans were previously categorized as clever but constrained, limited by their biological fragility and planetary boundaries, if those constraints no longer apply. They could be anywhere within a few of their centuries, finished the Silicon Consciousness representative. Their reproductive rates combined with this newfound adaptability present a significant statistical anomaly. Let's not be hasty, counseled the representative whose species had learned patience over eons of slow diffusion across their home world. They've managed to survive on one additional planet in their system. They still communicate primarily by making mouth noises and pushing tiny buttons. Their fastest vessels would take millennia to reach even their nearest stellar neighbors. And yet, countered the Andromedan observer, 50 of their years ago they were barely capable of orbital flight. Now they've colonized Mars. Their development curve doesn't follow standard evolutionary patterns. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Species that had evolved over millions of years to achieve technological enlightenment had always looked down upon the upstart humans, biological mayflies who had gone from discovering electricity to nuclear weapons in a single planetary rotation around their star. The thought that these same beings might now be expanding beyond their home world sent ripples of unease through the Assembly. I propose, said the Chancellor, that we immediately upgrade the observation protocols for the Sol system. Weekly monitoring, full-spectrum analysis, and direct contact consideration. Direct contact. Ambassador Krell's leaves stood straight up in alarm. They don't even qualify for preliminary assessment. They still think reality television represents cultural achievement. Nevertheless, the Chancellor's tone indicated the discussion was nearing its conclusion. We cannot ignore this development. If humans have found ways to survive in environments we deemed impossible for them, we must reassess all previous assumptions. The vote was swift and decisive. Sol system status would be elevated to potentially concerning accelerated development. A special committee would be formed to study the implications of human expansion beyond their home world. As the session concluded and delegates dispersed to their respective chambers, the Andromedan observer lingered. gazing thoughtfully at the holographic image of the Mars colony still rotating above the central platform. "You know," they said to no one in particular, "humans have a concept they call Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. But watching them, I sometimes wonder if they operate on its inverse. Anything they decide should work somehow does, despite all rational evidence to the contrary." The observer shook their sensor arrays in a gesture approximating a headshake. The galaxy might not be prepared for that kind of thinking. The image of Mars continued to rotate, the tiny lights of human habitation gleaming against the rusty darkness like stubborn stars, refusing to acknowledge they shouldn't exist. 3 standard cycles after the initial revelation, the Council's Special Assessment Committee gathered in a classified chamber deep within the crystalline headquarters. Holographic displays flickered with data streams as the committee members reviewed the comprehensive intelligence report on human Mars colonization. "This can't possibly be accurate," muttered the Proxian analyst, their multiple appendages twitching with agitation as they manipulated the display controls. "According to these records, humans initiated their Mars colony with technology that was essentially duct tape and optimism." "Duct tape?" inquired the Cygnes representative, whose species communicated primarily through color shifts and thus struggled with human idioms. "A primitive adhesive strip," explained the committee chairperson, "that humans use to repair everything from spaceship components to their household water distribution systems. Our xenoanthropologists believe it holds near-religious significance in their culture." The room's displays shifted to show historical footage of early Mars habitats. Pressurized cylindrical structures connected by tunnels that appeared to have been designed by someone who'd studied both architecture and origami, but mastered neither. Their early habitats operated on closed-loop life support systems with efficiency ratings that should have resulted in complete failure within 12 Earth months, noted the technical advisor, a silicon-based intelligence whose crystalline form sparkled with puzzlement. Yet they not only survived, but expanded. "How?" demanded the Proxian analyst. The technical advisor projected a series of human engineering schematics. "Apparently they improvise. When systems fail, they reconfigure them with available materials. They call this process engineering, though our translation matrices suggest sanctioned desperation might be more accurate. Their approach to radiation shielding is particularly concerning," added a biophysics specialist whose gelatinous form quivered with what might have been professional indignation. "Rather than developing proper radiation-neutralizing fields, they simply piled regolith on top of their habitats." "Regolith," the Cygnes representative shifted to a confused mauve. "Mars dirt," clarified the chairperson. "You're saying they protected themselves from lethal cosmic radiation with dirt?" The Proxians' appendages went still, a sign of extreme disbelief in their species. 3 to 5 meters of it, yes," confirmed the technical advisor. "Combined with water ice in the walls and genetically modified algae to assist with radiation absorption." "That's not technology," protested the Proxian. "That's gardening." The chairperson activated another display. "Even more disturbing is their approach to Mars' atmospheric deficiencies. Rather than dying appropriately as our models predicted, they've developed increasingly efficient atmospheric processing systems. They extract oxygen from the Martian regolith, harvest water from subsurface ice deposits, and grow food in what they call Martian soil, which is essentially toxic dirt they've treated with their own biological waste." A collective shudder passed through the committee members. "The psychological profiles are equally perplexing," continued the chairperson, bringing up new data streams. "Humans on Mars exhibit heightened levels of what they term frontier mentality. They take pride in surviving where they shouldn't, developing cultural practices specific to Martian conditions." The displays showed footage of humans engaged in various activities, operating machinery in dust storms, cultivating plants in geodesic greenhouses, and participating in what appeared to be a celebration involving red-tinted beverages and synchronized jumping in the lower Martian gravity. "They've turned survival into recreation," noted the xenopsychologist, a tentacled entity who specialized in aberrant cognitive patterns among emerging species. "Their Mars colonies have developed distinct cultural identities. They call themselves Martians and refer to Earth-dwelling humans as Earthers or gravity wells, the latter apparently being derogatory. So not only are they surviving, summarized the Proxian analyst. They're developing subfactions and tribal identities. That's all we need, humans with additional grievances and territorial claims. Their technological development has accelerated beyond projected parameters, added the technical advisor. Since establishing permanent habitation, they've developed more efficient solar energy systems, enhanced water reclamation technologies, and bioengineered plants specifically adapted to Martian greenhouse conditions. The chairperson's expression, a subtle realignment of photoreceptors, conveyed grave concern. Most alarming are their terraforming initiatives. Initial stages are already underway, including atmospheric processors releasing greenhouse gases to warm the planet and increase atmospheric pressure. They can't possibly succeed, objected the Proxian. Planetary engineering of that scale requires technological sophistication hundreds of levels beyond their capabilities. Our models initially concurred, acknowledged the chairperson. However, humans have demonstrated a disturbing pattern of achieving outcomes our predictive algorithms deem statistically improbable. It's their approach to problem-solving, offered the xenopsychologist. Where most species develop theories, test them thoroughly, and implement proven solutions, humans appear to operate on a principle of adequate approximation. They try something that seems close enough, modify it when it fails, and somehow muddle through to functional outcomes. That's not science, protested the biophysicist, ripples of indignation spreading across their gelatinous surface. No, agreed the xenopsychologist. By galactic standards, it's barely controlled chaos. Yet they've established a self-sustaining colony on Mars while species 10,000 years more advanced still debate the optimal parameters for extraplanetary habitation. The committee fell silent, contemplating the implications. There's more, said the chairperson reluctantly. Our long-range scans have detected preparations for what appears to be an additional settlement on one of Jupiter's moons, Europa, the ice moon with the subsurface ocean. The Proxian's appendages began twitching again. That's even less hospitable than Mars. Correct, and yet construction materials are being assembled in Mars orbit for transport to Jupiter space. They appear to be planning a drilling operation to access the subsurface ocean. This is absurd, declared the Cygni's representative, flashing an alarmed crimson. Their expansion should be constrained by biological limitations. Why haven't they died appropriately? Our xenopsychologist has a theory, said the chairperson, nodding toward the tentacled entity. Humans, began the xenopsychologist, appear to derive motivation from being told something is impossible. When presented with conditions that should limit them, they display a psychological response best translated as challenge accepted. That's not a viable evolutionary strategy, objected the biophysicist. And yet, countered the xenopsychologist, here we are discussing their improbable expansion through their solar system. The technical advisor projected a new series of images, human engineering designs for what appeared to be increasingly ambitious habitat structures. These are their plans for the next decade, explained the advisor. Expanded Mars settlements, mining operations on their asteroid belt, and preliminary designs for what they call generation ships, interstellar vessels designed to support multiple generations of humans during long-duration voyages. You can't be serious, said the Proxian. Their fastest propulsion systems would require centuries to reach even the nearest star systems. Indeed, confirmed the technical advisor. Nevertheless, they're designing starships. This is precisely why we've elevated the observation status of Sol's system, stated the chairperson. Humans display a dangerous combination of technological creativity, biological adaptability, and what can only be described as pathological optimism. The Cygni's representative flashed a pattern indicating deep concern. The Council must be informed of the full implications. If humans can adapt to Mars, Europa, and potentially deep space environments, our assumptions about their limitations are fundamentally flawed. There's one more element we should address, added the xenopsychologist, manipulating the displays to show a new data set. Intercepts of their communications networks reveal growing popular support for space expansion. Their entertainment media is saturated with narratives about human colonization of their solar system and beyond. Fiction, dismissed the Proxian analyst. Fantasy, perhaps, acknowledged the xenopsychologist. But for humans, today's fiction has a disturbing tendency to become tomorrow's engineering project. They imagine, then create, often skipping crucial intermediate steps like verify theoretical possibility or ensure survival probability exceeds 1%. Practical limitations will constrain them, insisted the biophysicist. Regardless of their psychological peculiarities, physics remains constant. The technical advisor's crystalline form glittered with what might have been amusement. One would think so, yet our historical records indicate that humans once believed heavier-than-air flight was physically impossible. 66 Earth years later, they were walking on their moon. Their rapid development timeline is unprecedented. Agreed, said the chairperson. From first powered flight to Mars colony in less than 3 centuries, a mere eye blink in galactic terms. We should revise their species classification from pre-FTL developing to potential emergent threat, suggested the Proxian, appendages now vibrating with unmistakable alarm. Not yet, cautioned the chairperson. That designation would trigger containment protocols, which the Council has never applied to a species that hasn't achieved interstellar capability. But they could develop such capability, insisted the Proxian. Their current trajectory suggests. We will continue observation and assessment, interrupted the chairperson firmly. I've authorized a direct reconnaissance mission. A survey vessel will enter Sol system under stealth protocols to gather more detailed intelligence on the Mars colony. The Cygni's representative flashed skeptical purple. Is that wise? If detected, it could alert humans to our existence before they're ready for contact. The alternative is to make decisions based on incomplete information, replied the chairperson. Given the potential implications of human expansion beyond their home world, that risk is unacceptable. The committee reluctantly concurred. The mission was approved and preparations began immediately. As the session concluded, the xenopsychologist lingered, reviewing the footage of Mars colonists celebrating the completion of a new habitat dome. The humans were jumping in the low gravity, their movements expressing unmistakable joy despite the hostile environment surrounding their fragile bubble of habitability. Remarkable creatures, the xenopsychologist murmured to the nearly empty chamber. Most species evolved intelligence as a survival adaptation. Humans seem to have developed it as a way to survive despite themselves. The holographic display showed a human child born on Mars, never having known Earth's conditions, bouncing exuberantly in Martian gravity while wearing a T-shirt emblazoned with the words Mars, technically inhabitable. The galaxy, sighed the xenopsychologist, is not prepared for this particular brand of determined foolishness. The Galactic Council stealth observation vessel, disguised as an unremarkable asteroid, established orbit around Mars with all cloaking systems engaged. Despite being equipped with the most advanced technology in 17 star systems, the ship's crew stared at their monitoring stations with expressions that translated universally as profound disbelief. They're playing golf, reported the chief observer, a Regalan whose 8 optical appendages were all focused on different monitoring screens, in pressure suits on the Martian surface. Impossible, declared the mission commander, hovering over to view the feed. The energy expenditure alone in such conditions would be. They've modified the game for Mars gravity, explained the xenorecreation specialist. They call it extreme low-G golf. Apparently, the record drive is 7 kilometers. The commander's chromatophores shifted to a troubled mauve. Are they aware this is a lethal environment? One suit puncture and they experience rapid decompression, freezing, and radiation poisoning simultaneously. They appear not only aware but enthusiastic about it, noted the chief observer. They've established a competitive league with elaborate safety protocols that they frequently ignore. The ship's xenobiologist, who had been analyzing atmospheric processing data, hovered over. Commander, you need to see this. The humans have accelerated their terraforming timeline. They've deployed nearly 3,000 atmospheric processors across the northern hemisphere. Effectiveness. Marginal by our standards, admitted the xenobiologist. But they're applying an exponential approach. Each generation of processors incorporates improvements based on performance data from previous deployments. Atmospheric density has increased 3.7% in just 7 Earth years. That's concerning, acknowledged the commander. Projected timeline to breathable atmosphere. At current rates, the xenobiologist's tentacles performed rapid calculations on a specialized interface, between 200 and 300 Earth years. That's thousands of human generations, scoffed the security officer. They'll never maintain project consistency for that duration. Actually, corrected the chief observer, humans live approximately 80 Earth years. It's only 3 to 4 generations. An uncomfortable silence fell across the command deck. Continue monitoring all settlement activities, ordered the commander. I want detailed analysis of their resource utilization, social structures, and adaptation mechanisms. The observation continued for 14 standard days. The data collected painted an increasingly disturbing picture for the council representatives. The humans had established 5 major settlement zones across Mars, each specializing in different aspects of colonization. One focused on agricultural development, another on mineral extraction, a third on atmospheric processing, the fourth on manufacturing, and the fifth, mysteriously dubbed University of Mars, appeared dedicated to what humans called research and development, but which the observation team classified as sanctioned recklessness. They're deliberately introducing Earth organisms into sealed Martian environments, reported the xenobiologist during the daily briefing, gesturing at footage from the university dome. Plants, insects, even soil microorganisms, all genetically modified to survive in Martian conditions. Biocontainment protocols, inquired the commander. Minimal by council standards, admitted the xenobiologist. They have what they call airlocks and sterilization procedures, but they seem more concerned with keeping Mars out than keeping Earth in. The commander's chromatophores darkened with concern. They're not trying to adapt to Mars, they're trying to make Mars adapt to them. Precisely, confirmed the xenobiologist. And they're succeeding incrementally. They've established what they call green zones, small areas where modified organisms survive with minimal support. The zones are expanding. The security officer, who had been monitoring defense capabilities, joined the conversation. Their military presence is minimal but growing. They've established what they call a Mars Defense Force, primarily focused on meteor detection and emergency response, but with rudimentary orbital defense capabilities. Against whom, wondered the commander, they're the only sentient species in their system. Themselves, apparently, explained the cultural analyst. Earth political factions maintain competing interests in Mars development. The colonists have developed an independent identity and governance structure they're prepared to defend. The mission's psychosocial expert, who had been unusually quiet throughout the observation, finally spoke. What none of you are addressing is the fundamental question. Why are they doing this at all? The command deck fell silent. Mars offers them nothing they couldn't obtain more easily on Earth, continued the psychosocial expert. The energy required to transport materials between planets alone makes the entire endeavor economically irrational. Yet they persist, investing massive resources in an inherently hostile environment. Resource depletion on their home world, suggested the security officer. Insufficient explanation, countered the psychosocial expert. The resources they've already expended on Mars colonization could have solved their terrestrial resource issues many times over. Then why? Asked the commander. The psychosocial expert's sensory appendages extended fully, a sign of deep consideration in their species. Having analyzed their cultural transmissions, historical records, and colonist interviews, I can only conclude they're doing it because they want to see if they can. That's not a rational motivation, objected the chief observer. No, agreed the psychosocial expert. By galactic standards, it's pathologically irrational, yet it appears to be a fundamental aspect of human psychology. This desire to expand, to overcome limitations, to inhabit spaces that actively resist their presence. They have a concept they call the frontier that holds near-religious significance. A new alert flashed across the command screens. One of the automated probes had detected unusual activity at the northernmost settlement. They've launched a ground expedition, reported the chief observer. A convoy of surface vehicles heading toward the polar cap. Purpose? Demanded the commander. The answer came after several moments of data analysis. Ice mining. Apparently, they're establishing a new outpost to extract water ice from the polar region. In-surface vehicles across 2,000 kilometers of radiation-soaked, freezing, nearly airless terrain. The commander's chromatophores pulsed with disbelief. "They've dubbed it Operation Frozen Stupid," noted the cultural analyst. "Yet morale among the expedition members appears extraordinarily high." The commander hovered silently for several moments, absorbing this information. "Prepare a comprehensive report for the council. Include all observational data with particular emphasis on terraforming progress and expansion capabilities." "Risk assessment classification?" inquired the chief observer. The commander's chromatophores shifted through a complex pattern that conveyed deep concern. "Classify humans as potentially disruptive species, extraordinary adaptation capacity." Add a special notation. "Caution, standard predictive models inadequate." As the observation vessel prepared to depart Mars' orbit, the psychosocial expert remained at the viewing portal, watching the tiny convoy of human vehicles making its slow way across the Martian surface toward the polar cap, like microscopic organisms crossing a vast Dead Sea. "They shouldn't be able to do that," murmured the expert. "They shouldn't even want to." "And yet," replied the commander who had approached unnoticed, "they do both. The council will need to reconsider many assumptions." The ship slipped away from Mars, accelerating toward the outer solar system to avoid detection. Behind it, the lights of human settlements glowed like defiant embers on the red planet's surface, a phenomenon that, according to every rational assessment, should not exist. The Galactic Council's Grand Chamber hadn't been this packed since the Betelgeusian copyright dispute over who owned the concept of tentacles. Representatives from all 3,000 member species crowded the tiered seating, their varied anatomies creating a living mosaic of galactic diversity. Even the normally disinterested quantum collective had sent observers, their probabilistic forms flickering between states of existence and mild boredom. At the center of the chamber, the High Chancellor stood solemnly beside a holographic projection of the Sol system, with Mars highlighted in pools-ing red. "The Special Assessment Committee's report cannot be misinterpreted," the Chancellor announced, all 17 eye stalks rigid with concern. "Humans have not only survived on Mars, but have established thriving colonies and begun planetary transformation. Their expansion timeline exceeds our most alarming projections." The chamber erupted into a cacophony of alarm, expressed in everything from subsonic rumbles to ultraviolet flashes. The Chancellor activated the acoustic dampeners before continuing. "The report further indicates they've initiated preliminary steps toward colonizing Europa and have theoretical frameworks for long-duration interstellar travel. They call these generation ships, a concept most species don't consider until at least 7,000 years after achieving planetary space flight." "What are we to do with such creatures?" demanded the Regalian ambassador, bioluminescent patches strobing with agitation. "They were classified as harmless primitives mere cycles ago." "I propose immediate containment," declared the representative from the Silicon consciousness. "Standard procedure for potentially disruptive species, gravitational barriers around their system, redirected asteroids to occupy their attention. Perhaps a carefully engineered resource crisis." "Would violate non-interference protocols," objected Ambassador Quell. "They haven't achieved interstellar capability yet," emphasized the Silicon representative. "Emphasis on yet. Their developmental timeline suggests they'll achieve rudimentary interstellar flight within 3 to 5 of their centuries. And then what? A species that considers radiation-soaked, airless wastelands prime real estate might not respect established territorial boundaries." The ancient delegate who had spoken in the previous session raised a withered appendage. The chamber fell silent. When beings who remember the galaxy's formation speak, even bureaucrats listen. "We face a philosophical dilemma," rasped the ancient one. "For eons, we've judged species by technological benchmarks: FTL travel, sustainable energy, unified planetary governance. Humans achieve none of these, yet they've expanded beyond their home world through sheer biological stubbornness and technological improvisation." The delegate paused, ancient eyes sweeping the chamber. "Perhaps our metrics are flawed. Perhaps adaptability and determination merit consideration alongside technological sophistication. The universe has many environments we've deemed uninhabitable. Humans apparently disagree." An uncomfortable silence settled over the assembly. "What action does the committee recommend?" asked the Andromedan observer. The Chancellor's eye stalks shifted in the galactic equivalent of a reluctant shrug. We recommend continued observation, with contingency planning for eventual contact, and perhaps a reevaluation of what we consider habitable and possible. So we do nothing, demanded the Silicon Consciousness representative. We learn, corrected the Chancellor, how humans transform environments deemed impossible, how they adapt when they cannot transform. Most importantly, we learn whether our assumptions about biological limitations and rational behavior require revision. As the session concluded, the holographic display showed new data from Mars. The polar expedition had established its outpost. Despite losing 2 vehicles to a dust storm, the colony network had expanded by 3% during the Council's deliberations. The Andromedan observer, preparing to depart, made a final note in their report. Humanity's expansion appears constrained only by their imagination, which, unfortunately for the galaxy, appears boundless. Their unofficial Mars colony motto, "Hold my beer and watch this," may represent the most concise summation of their approach to cosmic challenges. The Council would be wise to appreciate that any species which views Mars as fixer-upper real estate, rather than a lethal wasteland, may approach interstellar relations with equally unconventional perspectives. The report concluded with a proposed update to the Galactic Encyclopedia entry for humans, a species that treats physics less as an absolute law and more as a series of strongly worded suggestions.